Dangerous hobby for some people. Apologize if you have to, and things like that. There's going to be compensation payable. Be prepared to face the consequences. And most of the time, it's always the high-profile people. 10 years ago, I represented the former Prime Minister of Fiji, and I learned a lot about defamation during that case. The person who's been defamed, I think we all have to learn these days with social media to be somewhat thick-skinned.
Good day everyone, my name is Navneet Anand from aajKal, local and global. On behalf of whole team of Fiji Times, India Times, Australia, I welcome Mr. Harish Prasad to the studio. Mr. Prasad, welcome to the show.
I'm pleased to be here once again, Navneet.
2 years of difficult times all over the globe. The pandemic, which is now at the right end of it, we call it endemic. We all have gone through difficult times and survived, thank God.
Same here. I couldn't agree more. It's been testing time for everyone, and finally we can travel. We can go wherever we want.
Sitting and talking face to face with a gentleman like you has been missing for the last over 2 years. Loving it to the core of my heart. Social media has been playing a big role in everybody's life these days, especially when people were staying at home. They were going online and put whatever they want to. At times, me not liking somebody, I may go and put a derogatory remarks on someone.
Absolutely. People got carried away. I think you used the word keyboard warriors.
Yes.
Dangerous hobby for some people, but these days, people feel that they can say or whatever they want on social media. Dangerous thing at times, as we're going to discuss a bit later.
Defamation. The word itself is very heavy. It's very easy to go online, put some words for me, for you, or for anybody else, but people don't realize what they're putting is out of that momentarily anger or anguish that they have, but it turns out to be a situation which has defamed the other party. He may be wrong, he may not be wrong, but everybody has the right to maintain their dignity.
Absolutely. See, in the old days, I could say something to you or to at least one or two other people and it didn't really matter. Now people go on social media and say some terrible things, not realizing the implications. The other people, anyone can listen to it or watch it. And if it means that you've said something which is not true, and as a result of which you've defamed the person in a legal sense, then you're asking for trouble and could be very, very costly at times.
With social media, there are pluses and minuses both. Once it goes on the internet, it stays there. It's too difficult to extract it out. And people take the screenshots, they download the videos that you have done, even if you delete that particular comment or the post that you have done, but it's going to harm for the longer period to both parties.
Absolutely. See, in the old days, defamation was about some publication, some journalist saying something, not quite being careful about what he's saying. These days, people like us, lay people, who go and make comments. I'll give you an example. So you're not happy with someone's service, so you're not happy with a person, say a real estate agent or a lawyer like me, and you feel that someone's charged you too much, that lawyer, and you say, instead of saying, oh, I've been charged too much, or I feel that I've been ripped off by this lawyer, you make a comment like, this lawyer is a crook, for example. Now, you feel quite emotional about it, and you make a comment which suggests that this lawyer steals or things like that. That's what crook means. So then you can't take it back. My advice is, look, if you get caught out, so someone then reminds you or sends you a notice saying, how dare you say this and this is defamatory, do your best to mitigate. So, apologize if you have to and things like that, because if you don't, then, as I said before, it could be costly. Every person is not articulate, all that well educated, and don't realize the implications of a word. So you'll have a throwaway word that you use every day, and you think, well, what does it really matter? Calling someone a crook, what does it matter? Well, it does matter, because if it has an impact on that person's reputation, so a person is a professional person, you put it out there saying this person's a crook, well, of course it affects that person's reputation. So there's harm, and under the legislation, if the person who's been defamed can show that there's serious harm to that person's reputation, then of course you can sue. And it's like anything, you can be driving negligently and you run someone over and you hurt that person physically, you're going to be paying money for the injury, or at least your insurance company will. And then you have a similar thing in a defamation area where you say nasty things about someone. Well, it injures his reputation or his or her reputation. In that case, of course, there's going to be compensation payable.
What I've seen is these things were not taken seriously by a lot of businesses, but because they were not taken seriously, and a lot of people were started coming out and saying whatever they feel like, as you use the word crook. There are many more words similar to that. People just say it without realizing. Reputation, as we said, it takes years and years and years to get one.
Absolutely, and this is where people must be careful. I mean, if it's social media, you've got to realize that something you put down there cannot be taken back immediately. And if it gets out there, well, be prepared to face the consequences.
How expensive can this be to defend?
Well, there are two famous cases going on in New South Wales at the moment, and I'm sure people who are interested in legal cases will be following this in the media. One is a case involving the VC cross winner Roberts, and he's suing Channel 9 and all that. Now, from what I hear, it's going to be the most expensive litigation ever. It's been going for weeks and months, and the high-profile QCs and lawyers on both sides. It's like this high-stakes war, and someone's going to lose and have to pay a lot of money to the other party.
Because it's only one can win, unless they settle it out of court.
Yes, well, in this case, one party is suing for defamation, unlike another high-profile case that's just started, which is Clive Palmer suing
Western Australia Premier.
Now, in that one, they're suing each other. Okay. So the court may well find that both have been defamed and have to work out exactly who gets paid what.
So there are two cases parallelly being run, A suing B and B suing A. So at the end of the day, what end result comes out?
Oh, that's right. And it's very entertaining reading about these cases. I mean, we know that defamation is not cheap. It's not cheap litigation. And most of the time, it's always the high-profile people who end up running these cases because they can afford to finance it. That's why a lot of people will not go to court, because these sort of proceedings are expensive, and people will sometimes grin and bear it and decide not to go any further. But the law applies equally to everyone. So if someone is defamed, I see no reason why they can't take it to court and get damages out of it.
What I feel is these matters in court are not that simple as people think. Once it goes in there, they only have their point of view from one side without realizing there will be point of view from the other side as well.
Exactly, and all the more reason why lawyers have to be somewhat certain, because the losing party ends up paying the other party's cost, generally, in these sort of proceedings. So you don't want to be taking a punt and then losing.
No, not only the money, it is that emotional trauma, that mental stress one has to go through, the physical traveling to the court and waiting time and all that. If you calculate all that, that ends up to be much more than that.
It is. I mean, the personal trauma of going to court, we tend to forget that, but sometimes, every person is different. I mean, some people can come to court and be very confident and almost enjoy the moment, where some people are petrified. To them it's the most traumatic thing that they're going through, and it of course makes it worse because they've already suffered, and then in court they are cross-examined, they put in a witness box, and there's a very sort of high-profile, expensive barrister who cross-examines you for sometimes a day, 2 days. I mean, these famous cases going on at the moment. That's what happens. I mean, even that Clive Palmer's case with the Premier. Now, each of these people probably end up in a witness box where there's going to be some QC asking you lots of questions.
Humiliating questions at times.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you got to be prepared for all that.
I still remember that there was a case for a Fiji Prime Minister here in Australia, and probably you were the one who were running that.
Absolutely. In fact, if I was to write my memoirs, that would be one of the best or most high-profile cases I ever did. 10 years ago, I represented the former Prime Minister of Fiji, who was sued for defamation by a former politician from Fiji who was a lawyer in Sydney, and of course the case took place in New South Wales. Very high profile. Fortunately, Mahendra Chaudhry, the Prime Minister, won, but it was a great experience for all of us. And I learned a lot about defamation during that case. The case was about a lawyer saying that I've been defamed by the Prime Minister in a publication, in a book that was taken out in Fiji and also distributed in Australia. And of course, that was what it was about. Now, the other interesting thing about defamation is the case is generally heard by a jury.
Right.
So it's like your peers deciding, a bit like criminal trials, you know. So the finding of guilt or innocence comes from the jury. And in this case, of course, the jury decided in Chaudhry's favor.
Talking about jury, right? I'm just curious. The people sitting in the jury are not qualified to understand the law itself. So what are the bases that are taken there?
Well, the jury system goes back hundreds of years, and it's the best system, as far as I can tell, when it comes to deciding people's innocence and guilt, because it's your peers. So there's at least 12 people sitting there, and they could be, you know, people from every walk of life, and they're the ones sitting there deciding, listening to the evidence, listening to both lawyers' arguments, evidence that's put before them, and the judge's direction. So the judge has to, in the end, give a bit of a direction to the jury as to what they have to look at in deciding the case. And then your peers decide. I mean, you couldn't have a better system than that, at least for the moment.
Right. Before I wrap up and conclude, if you keep on talking, I think we will never stop. But concluding remarks from your side to both parties, the people who are commenting on social media, writing anything and anything about, and the people who are planning to go and put the defamation case against this. So what would be your advice for the audiences?
Well, the person who's been defamed, I think we all have to learn these days with social media to be somewhat thick-skinned. That's the expression I use. So don't get upset about something and go running to a lawyer, really, unless you can show some serious harm, as they say. You know, a lot of people come to us, and of course it's a costly affair, and do you really want to go through it? So, you know, the thing is to write to the other person, point it out to them that this is what you've said, and it's defamed, or it's affected this person, and it'd be good if you can send an apology, or what social media you use, you can sort of mitigate by saying, I'm sorry I said this, you know, I didn't mean to cause you any harm. The matter can rest there. But by and large, my experience is people, as you know, can be very stubborn at times, and they'll get on their high horse and say something worse than the first time.
Okay.
And that's where things escalate. So I keep saying that if as a person who's been defamed, you read or hear something and you say, wait a minute, this person said this, now this can affect my reputation because I'm a real estate agent. Now someone sees this and says, oh look, I rob people, or I'm a crook and things like that. Well, this is going to affect me. So why wouldn't I go and sue? And that's a kind of a way of determining whether or not you should take further action or not.
You know, having a conversation with Mr. Prasad, what I would like to suggest all the audience is, please hold on to your emotions. Think twice before you write or say anything. It can affect the other party emotionally as well. Mr. Prasad, thank you so much for coming onto the studio, and I look forward to see you once again very soon than later.
Navneet, it's always my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
One-stop answer to your Australian education and visa matters. Gemco Sydney. Dream big, achieve big.
Fiji Times. Be with the times.